Last night I was thinking, what would the NHL be like if every single player in the league was in their prime and at their best? So I did a little bit of researching and looked at everyone's career highs and when they were at their best, and compiled a list of 5 teams in which I think would be the best teams in the NHL if every single player in the league was in their prime. Before I get into the actual 5 teams, I want to give some honorable mentions. The Boston Bruins, who would have a prime David Backes back when he was on St. Louis, to go along with prime Chara, Bergeron, Marchand, and all of those guys. The Blackhawks would have prime Chris Kunitz, Duncan Keith, and Brent Seabrook. The Dallas Stars would have prime Jason Spezza to go along with Sagan and Benn. The Leafs would now have prime Patty Marleau to go along with their amazing offense. And the Anaheim Ducks would have prime Getzlaf, Perry, and Ryan Kessler. All would be fantastic teams, but they didn't quite crack the top 5. Starting off with the Tampa Bay Lightning, and I want to remind you guys this is in no particular order. It's not 1 through 5 or 5 through 1. It's all just the 5 best teams in my opinion. And I had to put Tampa Bay on here, and I know there's going to be a lot of jokes about them getting swept in the playoffs and everything. But this team, if everyone was having a career year, is honestly just ridiculous. And they were ridiculous this year. Nikita Kucherov from this year, 128 points. You'd have the 2011-2012 Steven Stamkos, which in my opinion was when he was at his best. I think he put up around the same amount of points this year as he did then. But 60 goals, and a lot of them he was creating for himself, and I think a lot of his points this year were kind of inflated by playing with so many amazing players. So you'd have prime Stammer, Braden Point from this year, Tyler Johnson, and Andre Palat from the 2014-15 season. They were both spectacular. And then last year's Yanni Gourde, where he put up 64 points. So all top 6 forwards above 60 points, 3 of them above 90, and then obviously Nikita Kucherov leading the way with a ridiculous 128 points. Now taking a look at Tampa Bay's back end, Victor Hedman from last year with 63 points, this year's Ryan McDonagh with 46 points, last year's Sergachev with 40 points, the 2011-2012 version of Dan Girardi, he was on the Rangers at the time, 29 points, and goaltender Andrei Vasilevsky from last year, 44, 17, and 3, a 2.62 goals against, and a 920 save percentage. I probably would have put on Vasilevsky from this year if he hadn't gotten injured, because I feel like if he didn't get injured this year, he probably would have had some absolutely ridiculous numbers. But all in all, this entire Tampa Bay team from top to bottom is just ridiculously stacked, and even though they did have a absolute failure of a playoffs this year, I could not justify keeping them out of the top 5. Next up is the Washington Capitals with prime Alexander Ovechkin and Nick Backstrom. Some ridiculous numbers between the two, and I know there's a lot of stats in this video, and a lot of you guys could probably just say I could have just looked this up myself, but I really did think it would be a pretty exciting and fun video to look at. So Ovechkin leading the way from the 2007-8 season, where he had 65 goals, a total of 112 points. Nick Backstrom from the 2009-2010 season, 101 points. Last year's Kuznetsov with 83 points. 2013-14 TJ Oshie from the St. Louis Blues with 60 points. This year's Jacob Vrana and this year's Tom Wilson with 47 and 40 points apiece. So obviously, you look at the numbers there, it does drop off a little bit with Vrana and Tom Wilson, but this team is absolutely stacked when you consider having 2 guys scoring 100 plus points, and then still have players like Kuznetsov, Oshie, and then obviously in the defensive end, where we're going to get to next. Now taking a look at the back end for the Washington Capitals, you have this year's John Carlson, who in my opinion should have got some recognition and should have been in the conversation for the Norris Trophy. In the end, he wasn't nominated, I don't think, but still a pretty fantastic year for John Carlson. And then you have him quarterbacking a power play with Ovechkin when he was scoring 65 goals. That would be very, very unstoppable. And then you have Matt Niskanen from the 2016-17 season, where he put up 39 points. You have the 2016-17 Dmitry Orlov, where he put up 33 points. And then you have the 2009-2010 Pittsburgh Penguins shutdown defenseman Brooks Orpik, who also gave you 25 points. And in goal, the Braden Holtby from 2015-16, where he had 48 wins and just 9 regulation losses, 7 overtime losses, a 2.20 goals against, and a 922 save percentage. A fantastic year for Braden Holtby, with the best year of his career, and definitely this back end complementing that amazing forward group. This team would be a problem in the NHL. Next up, we have the San Jose Sharks, and a big reason why they are on this is because of Joe Thornton. If you add prime Joe Thornton to this roster, this team would be probably the favorite to win the Stanley Cup. Think about a first line of Joe Thornton, one of the best playmakers of all time, centering a guy like Timo Meier, who is an up-and-coming goal-scoring machine, and then having like an Evander Kane on the other wing. That would be amazing. And then you still have guys like Thomas Hertl, Logan Couture, and Joe Pavelski. This team would be absolutely ridiculous. Joe Thornton from 2006-07, 114 points, 92 assists. That is just remarkable. Everyone forgets how good Joe Thornton really was, but he was a superstar player, and it's pretty amazing that he's still producing right now. You have 2013-2014 Joe Pavelski with 41 goals. Logan Couture from this year with 70 points. This year's Hurdle with 74 points. This year's Timo Meier with 66 points, and obviously 2011-2012 Evander Kane from the Winnipeg Jets, 30 goal score, 57 points. Looking at this top six and the possible line combinations and on the power play, this would be probably the most unstoppable crop of forwards in the entire NHL. But when you take a look at the defensemen and goaltending for this team, it just makes it that much better. You have this year's Brent Burns, 83 points, a Norris Trophy candidate. A point over a point per game for a defenseman is pretty remarkable. But then you throw in the 2015-16 Erik Karlsson from the Ottawa Senators, where he was a point per game player. 2 point per game defensemen to go along with these forwards. This team is ridiculous. And then you have Marc-Edouard Vlasic from the 2015-16 season, where he had 8 goals and 31 assists for 39 points. And then last year's Justin Braun, who had 33 points. And then in goal, you have Martin Jones from the 2015-16 season, where he went 37, 23, and 4 with a 2.27 goals against and a 9.18 save percentage. So the one thing, and maybe the one weakness of this team, is goaltending, but Martin Jones in the 2015-16 season was still pretty fantastic. And you have those two defensemen, this amazing forward group. I honestly wish this could actually happen, because this would be such a fun team to watch. Next up, I'm sure a lot of you guys saw this coming, the Pittsburgh Penguins with prime Sid when he was scoring at such a ridiculous rate, 2006-07, 120 points, and then you have the 2008-2009 Evgeny Malkin, 113 points. You have last year's Kessel with 92 points, this year's Gensel, 40 goal scorer, 76 points. You have the 2013-14 Patrick Hornqvist back when he was on the Predators with 53 points, and then last year's Nick Bjugstad with the Florida Panthers, 49 points. And I know it does kind of drop off towards the bottom with Hornqvist and Bjugstad, but being led with Crosby and Malkin and Kessel scoring at such a ridiculous rate, and then you throw in now Jake Gensel, who is one of the most up-and-coming goal scorers in the NHL with 40 goals, this forward group would be pretty remarkable. And now we're going to take a look at their defense as well, which makes it that much better. So the D-core for this team is obviously led by Chris Letang, but the 2015-16 version, where he had 67 points, and then you throw in the 2016-17 Justin Schultz, who was one of the best defensemen in the entire NHL. I bet the Edmonton Oilers wish they did not let him go. And then you have the 2010-11 Jack Johnson when he was on the LA Kings, putting up 42 points, and then last year's Oli Mata with 29 points. And in goal, you have the 2016-17 Matt Murray, who had a record of 32, 10, and 4 at 2.41 goals against and a 9.23 save percentage. The only thing that could make this team better is if it was an all-time Penguins team with Marc-Andre Fleury in net, but even though it's just Matt Murray, this is still a ridiculously good team, and if this was a real thing, this would most definitely be one of the top teams in the league. And now finishing off the video with the Los Angeles Kings, and you guys might be thinking how they are one of the worst teams in the league, but looking at this team with everyone in their prime, it would be virtually unstoppable. You have Ilya Kovalchuk in his prime, 2005-06 season, 52 goal scorer, 98 points with the Atlanta Thrashers. Then you have last year's Anze Kopitar, who was a candidate for the Hart Trophy with 92 points while still being one of the best two-way forwards in the entire NHL. You have the 2008-2009 Jeff Carter back when he was on the Philadelphia Flyers, 46 goal scorer, 84 total points. He was a star. Last year's Dustin Brown was 61 points. The 2015-16 Tyler Toffoli, where he scored 30 goals and had 58 points. That was back when Tyler Toffoli actually said he was capable of winning an Art Ross Trophy, and we all know how that turned out. And then you have last year's Adrian Kempe with just 37 points. So it kind of drops off there, but looking at the defense and goaltending, that is where this team gets very, very good. Now looking at the back end, it's obviously led by Drew Doughty from last year with 60 points, but then you have Dion Phaneuf, and a lot of people forgot how good this guy was in his prime with the Calgary Flames in 2007-2008 season. 60 points, one of the heaviest hitters in the league, that 1-2 punch on the blue line to go along with that amazing forward group backboned by the prime Jonathan Quick. This team, if this was a real thing, in my opinion, might be the best in the entire league. And then you have Alec Martinez from the 2016-17 season, 39 points. You have last year's Derek Forbort with 18 points. He was kind of the only guy that would really fit in this top four. And then Jonathan Quick from the 2015-16 season, 40, 23, and 5, at 2.22 goals against and a 9.18 save percentage. This team, in my opinion, would be the real deal. This was a lot of fun to do, and look at all these numbers, because I kind of forgot Dion Phaneuf was on this team, and I kind of forgot he was that good as well. But this LA Kings team, make no mistake, would probably be a top team in the league if this was actually to happen. So that is going to wrap up the video. I really hope you guys did enjoy. This was a lot of fun to make. It took a long while, so if you guys could, make sure to go down there and please drop a like on the video. Show some support, share it with your friends. And I know, like I said, I'm probably going to get a lot of comments saying, oh, I could have just looked up stats for this. But I kind of wanted to turn it into a video form. And with that being said, I hope you guys all enjoyed the video. If you did, please make sure to drop a like on it and subscribe to the channel for daily NHL content. And I will see you guys all in the next video.